Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Information Faster for Those Who Need It Most. I'm Teresa Resick, Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And joining me are Kevin Crane from AIIM and Tim Tallickson from Highland. And Highland is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them very much for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. As we get started, just want to share a few tips for participating in today's webinar. By joining our event live, you can resize the windows that you have in front of you. I encourage you to open group chat and so that you can message with each other and also with us here at AIIM. And that's in the list of icons across the bottom of your screen. So when you open group chat, please go ahead, stop in there, say hello, and share where you're joining us from. I always enjoy seeing who all is out there today. Download the resources we have for you. There's a number of really cool things that we've posted there, and that's in that area to the right of the slides. When you click on those links, it's going to open in a new browser tab, and you'll be able to save off those files and have some really good reading after our event today. I do encourage you to ask questions of the speakers with the Q&A feature, and we'll hold them until the end where we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can, but we definitely have a time slotted for Q&A later in our webcast. I also would appreciate it if you would take the survey, because I do value your feedback and just want to know how we did today. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIM.org Resources Webinars page in just a few days. I do want to introduce the speakers we have joining us. Kevin Crane is a professional writer, technology analyst, and award-winning podcast producer. As AIM's content strategist, Kevin authors eBooks and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management topics, and also about digital transformation. He is the producer and host of AIM on Air podcast, which was just named one of the 10 best business process management podcasts you should listen to. And also joining us today is Tim Tallickson, and Tim is the Director of Intelligent Processing Solutions at Highland. And I'm very pleased to have both of these folks with us today. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin to begin our talk. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here on another great AIM event talking about information faster for those who need it most. And I think this is a really important topic because that's really what it's all about, isn't it? It's information, getting information to the people who need it is really, I feel, at the heart of digital transformation. Why? Because information drives really every internal process. Pick any process in any organization, large or small, in any country in the world, and you can bet that information drives that process, the things that actually make the company go and make money and be successful. So it's a really important topic that we're talking about today. Information also does a number of really important things. It forms customer experience and satisfaction. Information inspires business insight for better decision-making and better business performance. Information stimulates things like innovation into new markets and new services and opportunities. So what we're here to talk about, I feel, is really getting at some of the core KPIs that all organizations use to measure their success. And there is a driving need for new ways of working using what we're going to be talking about today, intelligent capture. Why should you move forward? What's wrong with the way that we've always done it? Well, number one, every organization is doing more with less. And now in a remote work environment, new tools and new capabilities help us address the gaps in performance and put more automation and intelligence into the process so that organizations can ensure they're capturing information and have the systems and automation in place to begin to leverage it. It's all about enabling organizations to do more with less, but more importantly, perhaps, to be more agile and more innovative. These are key attributes of digital transformation and essential attributes, I feel, for any organization to compete moving forward. Users are also very likely to classify things inconsistently over time, and the more complex the classification structure, the more likely this is to be the case. So the techniques and technologies that we're going to be talking about today address these human errors. I don't know if I would call it human errors, perhaps just the human condition, if you will, making it easier and less hassle for the humans involved. And finally, the scale of incoming content is just simply too large and too varied for our old approach, our old manual approaches to have really any chance of success, especially now. I think now is the time for organizations to take advantage of this confluence, the confluence of where we are as businesses and in society, in the market, and with technology, and not just look at the downside, but really see the opportunity and the impetus to innovate and be more intelligent. So that brings us to the question, how do you put intelligence into intelligent information management? And the new AIIM Information Watch that is co-sponsored with Highland explores a checklist of 4 things that we can do today. Number 1 is to address information overload, information chaos head on. And to me, this is a rallying call for us to view information capture as a critical and strategic activity. The stats tell us the story. Our own AIM members in AIM research tell us they expect the amount of information coming into their organizations to expand by as much as 4.5 times over the next 18 months, 24 months. But even more than that, over 60% of that is unstructured. And so to me, intelligent capture is the starting point for our digital transformation initiatives. And really, capture should not be thought as an afterthought, focused primarily on documents or paper or on archive, and really should be connected to the larger needs of the enterprise and the business, and serious tools applied, automated tools for intelligent capture. And we're going to be talking about some of those aspects today. We need to focus our efforts at capturing information at the point of origin. I can't stress this enough. The sooner that we capture and digitize information, the sooner that we can leverage it into downstream processes to improve those processes, do things like fuel customer experience and drive decisions and innovations. And you can't do that if information is either unknown or locked on paper somewhere. And we'll be exploring some of this with Tim here in a moment, the ideal points of entry to apply our capture efforts. Another major point brought up in the Information Watch is this idea of measure, measure, measure. You can help elevate the strategic importance of what we're talking about, intelligent capture, information management, by committing to clear and meaningful process metrics. In other words, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So things like cycle times and error rates, staffing levels, computing resources, these are all important measures to put into place before and after. And finally, keep the end game in mind. And as I'm hinting at, I believe the end game is ways we can use information to improve the performance of the organization and not just be concentrating perhaps on the risk and the archivability of what we're doing. So with that, I'd like to point us all to download the research paper that we're exploring today. You can find it at aim.org/research and dig into this topic a little bit more deeply. So with that, I'd like to invite us to welcome Tim Tallickson to the event today. As Teresa mentioned, Tim is the Director of Intelligent Processing Solutions at Highland. And so, Tim, welcome. Given the recent events and the number of organizations committed to work from home for the foreseeable future, why do you feel it's so important to capture information and data as soon as it enters the organization? And what are the advantages from your point of view?
Yeah, greetings, Kevin. Thank you for having me. And Teresa, thank you for the warm introduction and the kickoff on the call. I'm glad to be spending some time with you guys here today. So many organizations were forced into, huge process changes earlier this year, as we know. A lot of work from home, a lot of disrupted, workplaces. So it really changed the game on a lot of things. But the reality is, it's not completely new. There's always been a need to capture documents, paper, transactions early in the process in order to do things really, really efficient. I think back to when I got started in this industry in the early 90s, and I remember people saying things like, well, that's kind of silly. We're going to be working in paperless offices pretty soon. None of this is really going to be necessary. And here we are almost 30 years later, and we're still worrying about capturing documents as they enter our organization. So, today that means it might mean capturing paper at a point of origin, but we're seeing tremendous shifts there also where it's not just paper that's coming in, but there's electronic documents that are coming into directly to people. And when they're displaced and out of the office, many of those, kind of as you say, there's the inconsistency of classifying some of those documents. Many of them just simply get routed and started off in the process the incorrect way, even though they are electronic already. So we're going to see a continued mix of content that comes into an organization, and it really needs to be validated right at the entry point so that we start that recording process. So as you mentioned, Kevin, it's very important to measure these things and tune processes down the line. So for so many reasons, it has been important. It continues to be important. And we don't really know what the future is going to look like of the standard office and standard workplace. So it's now more than ever more important to put some of these consistent, measurable, rules-based electronic processes into organizations to make sure that we have the tools we need going forward. And companies really are just at different points in their journey. And we'll talk about this a little as we go, sort of a maturity curve of digital transformation. But there are many organizations that are at some point between we just shuffle paper all day long and we have, an optimal digital journey for all of our content. Most people are somewhere in the middle. So one of the most important things is determining where you are, what the most valuable steps are to take place next, and then where you're going to go with that information. So it's now more important than ever, but it's always been there. But keeping in mind things like employee safety and the new work environment gives us a time to pause and really rethink the start of so many of these processes.
It's really a great opportunity now to make some movements forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just wanted to point this out, too, that, that's not just that we think so, and AIM thinks so, but many organizations that think of themselves as top performers in the space, they think of this as, with a sense of urgency, and they point to this as something that's important to their plans going forward. So it's a focus for many of the top performing organizations out there. How do I capture content very early in the process so I set myself up for success down the road?
Now, Tim, we often think about technology and the technology factors, but what specific organizational considerations should we address today in order to leverage captured information and improve the performance of the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. In my experience, two areas that I see companies maybe either underestimate or not put enough priority on in the beginning. For one, is really just the culture change that their organizations are going to see. Many folks are very set in their ways of how they do their jobs. We've worked with many large banks, insurance companies, healthcare organizations where you've got many long-term employees that are used to doing things in a certain way. And bringing big digital transformation changes to those organizations is upsetting to the way people, have been working for a long time. So you have to pay mind to that and make sure that you're getting your people on board early in the process so that you have the best chance of success. You also have to think about how your organization is constructed. Just the same as, manufacturers and shipping companies have shipping and receiving departments for bringing goods in, shipping goods out. You've really got to think about, if I'm going to bring all of my documents into an organization, are there opportunities to bring them into centralized locations? Far too often we see people send things in and around an organization to the people that they think have the best chance of getting some work done for them rather than the entry point of a process. And whereas, outside things like vendors or students or constituents try and work around your processes that they put in place because they think they can find a better way, inevitably it leads to a lot of disruption in the organization. So thinking about the structure of how to bring things in your company and really paying mind to the culture change that you're going to see is very, very important. Two things that I think can't be stressed enough there. So it's not just the technology. The reality is this is a very mature market. Not only does Highland have mature products, but there's other mature products out there in the field. And as I said, many organizations are at different points in their technology journey. They need to be sort of really mindful to getting everybody moving forward on that train, if you will. And this is we've got different variations of this, and I've seen many put together by other organizations also. But it kind of gives a little indication of what some of the features or technology pieces are about a company that's elevating their way through a digital transformation journey. So you may or may not be a very physical document, manual process-based organization, but surprisingly, there are many, many out there that really still are. But really, when folks come to us and say, where do we go next from here, we don't just try and paint this perfect picture about the big bang of how you can implement all this great technology. You've got to start slow. You've got to implement certain core pieces of the technology and the process to make sure that you can build on. So some of the first things are really just scan your back file, if you will, right? Many organizations still have boxes and boxes of paper in their own basements or outsourced in different places where they can digitally convert those, store them internally or in a cloud, and have access to those. The next sort of big thing that happens is when you try and bring those in at the beginning of the process, you've got the opportunity to enforce policies, measure those processes, and tweak and improve them in ways that really were not there before. Again, many times we were left to the way we always did it, or how individuals thought might be the most efficient way from their view or their perspective in the organization, but not from a global perspective by knowing all of the different potential bottlenecks and things that could interfere, with your ideal business process. So just kind of giving a little bit of an idea, we're going to spend some time talking about intelligent data extraction, and I think that is sort of like a level 4 kind of class, if you will. But companies really need to sort of build up their internal processes, their people, their structure to get to those beneficial technologies to really optimize their business processes.
All right. Very good. Well, I understand the continuum, starting with scanning and linking and electronic forms and workflow all the way up to fully automated. But how do we put more intelligence into all that? Can you point us to some specific applications or processes that you feel offer the most opportunity? Yeah,
absolutely. To do a little word match here, or even acronym match, when people often think about intelligent capture or intelligent data capture, intelligent process, they often drift to the acronym of OCR, optical character recognition. And it's a very important part of this intelligent extraction process, but it's not the end all, right? So optical character recognition really is the technology that gets used to look at documents, whether they be paper documents that we scan in or electronic documents that arrive in your organization, such as PDFs. It can even be faxes. It can be all kinds of things. And we use technology to read that document and convert that information, not from an image, but back into text, right? For some folks, this may be a pretty new concept, but I think there's a lot of veterans out there that really understand the role that OCR plays in. Far too often, what happens is people jump right to, well, what's the effectiveness of that or the efficiency rate? What's the accuracy of that OCR? And that is and can be a very important metric to use from intelligence, but that's not where the real intelligent part happens. Because what we really need to do with that information that we've extracted from the documents is do like a person would do. We need to look at that document and figure out, well, what kind of document is this? So when we look at sort of that second step on this chart that I have here, classify, what we'll do is lift information from a document, read it all, and then based upon machine language or machine learning, I should say, and artificial intelligence, will determine what kind of a document is this. Is it a contract? Is it an invoice? Is it a piece of correspondence? And many organizations have hundreds, if not thousands, of kinds of documents that may come in into their place of business. So being able to not be dependent upon a person to do that, bring in all the information from all of the different sources, and then determine what that document is a big piece of the intelligence puzzle, or the efficiency puzzle also.
It's really taking the robots are taking the robots out of the human in this case.
They really are, yeah, because not only once we identify what kind of a document it is, and that's not always foolproof either. We don't just look at with software, with a robot, look at a document and say, I think this is an invoice. Well, it could be an invoice. It could be a service order. It could be a credit memo. They might look similar. So in those cases where we can't optimally determine what kind of document it is, because it's just too close based upon our software algorithms, we'll surface that to a person for them to make a final determination. And even if we're slightly unsure, companies can set their own thresholds based upon their level of comfort with the technology to say, when do I bring a human into the circle here to make a final determination? So this kind of technology affords organizations the ability to do that. And then as we know what kind of document it is, well, then we're going to proceed on to getting the information out of that document that we feel is important to our business process. So using something simple like an invoice, we're going to want to figure out, well, who did it come from? What's the invoice or purchase order number? How about the line items and the dollar amounts that are on there, the date, the terms, that sort of information? So we'll extract all of that information from what the OCR engine gave us also. And then in there, you've got all kinds of sets of levels of confidence that you need to consider. So, there's the accuracy of figuring out the document, the accuracy of reading the purchase order number off of a document, for instance. But then what we want to do is not only verify that we've got that number correctly, we want to validate it against our back-end systems. Because once we say, oh, this is purchase order number 567, it was sent to this particular vendor, well, then we can pull the information from a back-end system to compare and validate, for instance, the line items that maybe we've read off that document. And from there, we can figure out, do we have everything we need? Are we missing some information? And so on. So I go through that little bit of an example because, the intelligence doesn't stop at just the OCR piece. There's so many more intelligence steps along the way, including strategically bringing people into the process to either validate or verify or make final decisions, but to do that in the most effective way possible. And I've got just a couple of other slides here that maybe just give you a graphic way of sort of viewing that. When we talk about that extraction, we'll go ahead and read all of the OCR off of a document, just like a person would do, and say, you know what, looking at this, it says invoice, it says shipped, it says your order number. I'm betting this thing's an invoice, right, based upon the rule set that we've configured. Even if it's never seen this document before, just like a person, never seen it, but you'll recognize that it's an invoice or a bill of lading or a transcript or an application for a credit card, whatever that may be that comes in your organization. And then once we've determined that, now we've got rule sets that can go in there and look at the individual fields and start pairing them up with the surrounding content to say, well, this date here, that looks like the invoice date. This date here is the date the invoice is due, or this is the date that the order was shipped. And so all information, even though it may look very similar to the human eye, will use artificial intelligence and the context of the information around it to finally determine what our best guess is to what that represents, and then feed that in the system. And again, at any point along the way, if we're unsure, we'll pull people into the loop to verify that information.
Right. Again, making it better for the people involved while removing the redundant and sort of trivial work that folks are doing. It's really the best of both worlds. Now, can you give us an example of an organization that's been using this approach, and what were the results, and how can we do it too?
Yeah, for sure. We'll go ahead and move the slide up to the next one. So, we've worked with, we've got about 15,000 organizations with solutions in production today that we've worked with at Highland. And those companies vary in geographic settings and in the languages that they support, the industries that they're in. for instance, also. So one of the companies I want to highlight is something that is probably familiar to most people, but global international company of Siemens. They had progressed along and implemented many different pieces of technologies and sort of fragmented their landscape of all the different things that they were doing. Very decentralized setup they had as an organization, probably not unlike a lot of your organizations. So not only were they using something like SAP to manage all the financial transactions for their own organization, they had upwards of 50 instances of SAP systems worldwide due to acquisitions or mergers or splits. Different regional or technology purchases had become very fragmented and had also used a great number of supporting OCR and technology tools in different ways. So we were able to work with them and use our end-to-end technology to capture all of their invoices, regardless of where in the world they originated, get them into a centralized system that supported upwards of 50 different languages, and you can see the volumes in there, 3.5 million documents per year. That's grown greatly since we put some of these numbers together. And then take that information, verify it, and validate it in its native language with the people that were most appropriate to make decisions on those documents, interact with their core correct SAP systems to validate things like the line items or the PO number, or even if the vendor existed in their system, and then route that through an approval process in a way that really shortened the time it took for them to pull in invoices, process them, make payments to their vendors, keep happy vendors, take discounts, avoid late fees, duplicate payments, all of those things that you would think of in a payable process. But it is something that just shortened their end-to-end process and gave them tremendous amount of savings by capturing the documents right up in the beginning of the process and then using these tools to sort of make that a very intelligent process.
So in addition to...
example,
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm just curious, in addition to the savings at Siemens, in what ways were they able to leverage the information captured in that AP capture process for other areas like business intelligence or customer experience? Were there some other improvements made there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And we see this with many customers. You know, you'll get business intelligence and opportunity for improvement in a number of ways. Not just limited to your own internal processes. Most folks think about things like, well, where are my bottlenecks, or where are my opportunities to do further training with employees, or maybe add some resources to streamline a process. You get all that information, so internally you can fine-tune what you're doing as an organization. But you also learn an awful lot about your vendors and be able to create a data warehouse on those transactions with them. And give you a for instance. Previous to this, with very separate systems and a lot of manual processes, it really wasn't known or centralized which vendors were, so to speak, good or easy to deal with, and which vendors were very difficult or expensive to deal with. So by analyzing this information, you can know what were your troublesome transactions, where did they originate, what kinds of transactions were they, maybe what vendors they were isolated to. So when it came time to do things like renegotiate rates or contracts, you're armed with more information, intelligence about the process that you both share in. And it gives an organization a way to drive down costs even further beyond just their internal process information.
Yeah, that visibility is incredibly important. I mean, otherwise, those aspects would be unknown to the organization or only be anecdotal in their feedback, right?
That's right. You wouldn't have anything to really support that information other than your subjective view on a situation. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, and as companies aggressively grow and change, you've got people moving in and out of roles, and so much of that information is just lost to time.
Yes. Or never seen at all.
Or never seen it all.
Or never seen it all. How can you make good decisions if you don't have that perspective and information? In this case, about your vendors and the performance and the impact of the process on the organization. All right. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to hold you up, but I was curious about some of the other ancillary benefits there.
No, it's a good question. You know, as you went through your introduction and talked about measure, I actually jotted it down in my notepad next to me, and I said, yes. That's a hugely important piece. I'm very glad you asked that question. We often talk about things like financial transactions and invoices because sometimes they're just easier for, people have a lot of experience with that. So you can think about the technology and apply it in a way that is meaningful for you. But another area that we see organizations leverage this technology is something like this, a university, right? So not only just students entering into, in this case, Customer University of Arkansas, do we want to process applications, financial aid information, transcript information as they come in? Because that's a business also. The quicker that you could turn around somebody's application and give them a positive or affirming start date or acceptance into your university, the more likelihood you have of acquiring those good students that you've got targeted. But we also see, and I know this because my own children have gone through this as they've kind of moved through school systems, you get a lot of people that start in one place and move to another. So not only are some of these large universities dealing with their normal annual admission process of people entering into their freshman classes and all, but you've got folks that are moving into their system from local junior colleges, community colleges, transferring from other state and private institutions. So the information that comes into their business is as varied as invoices coming in as vendors. And if you think about something like a transcript, we want to be able to process that, as quickly as we can and as efficiently as we can, and be able to do it in a way where we're leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence, because you may get a transcript into your organization that you've never seen before because a format has changed or a location is new to you, as a sort of a, in your business-to-business transaction, if you will. So this same technology that can be used for processing things like invoices or applications or transcripts, it's flexible enough to be used on any kind of structured or unstructured document. So just to give you a little variety, a University of Arkansas, a key customer of ours, longtime customer of ours, they see annual growth of students both transferring in and enrolling new into their organization, and they process everything right from the beginning electronically. And for a student entering a school system, currently, it's not just a nice to have; it's an expectation to have that all of this is processed electronically and upfront.
Oh, absolutely. And a customer experience differentiator. I know my son is transferring from junior college now and
Exactly.
working to enlist himself online in a number of universities here in Oregon. And we've been having difficulty with the transcript and the whole process. Now, I understand colleges are under great pressure and change right now, but it's absolutely spilling over into our customer experience. We're having difficulty with one university, and you know what? We may indeed move to another university simply because of the difficulty with University One, getting his transcripts figured out and on all of that. It's frustrating to us, and indeed we may move to another institution because of that. You don't think about capturing information and transcript turnaround time as maybe something that would affect that quote bottom line, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, it sure could. And, we make those decisions in our own life, right? You go into a car dealership, if they're not easy to deal with, you may walk right out the door.
Right.
But if you're in a large multinational organization and you're dealing with a vendor or you're dealing with another company and they're difficult to deal with, you're going to shop your business elsewhere. If you don't have the most modern, cutting-edge, up-to-date, personal experience, like you say, you're going to take your business elsewhere. So it has an impact, and it has an impact on the longevity of business relationships. It's to the point of expected in table stakes that companies have, ease of working together like this.
Absolutely essential in order to compete in our world moving forward. Absolutely. All right. Well, Tim, it's been great speaking with you today. I want to get to our question and answer period, but before we do, one last question. What should CIOs and execs and information management professionals, what should we all be thinking about and planning for in order to be prepared for the world in 5 years' time?
That's always the question. Because as I say, 25 years ago, people were thinking, flying cars and paperless offices and all those things. Whereas I don't expect, tremendous. We're not going to have flying cars and things like that. We're still going to have a good amount of manual and business processes. The things that companies should be thinking about is as they are automating other pieces of their organization, whether it be core, line of business systems, student information systems, ERP systems, accounting packages, those sort of things, claims and underwriting systems at insurance companies, be mindful and thoughtful around the supporting processes that make those systems work. And an area that we are really going to see some traction in is artificial intelligence for decision support. So even as we modernize and move a lot of things to the cloud inside of our IT centers, we're going to still see the people that surround the process making decisions. But if we're doing all of that in a very automated, captured up front, record all the decisions kind of way, we're going to be able to leverage the technology, the robots, right, that people think of, to help make those decisions and allow us to reallocate our staff to things that are more important, far more customer-facing, customer service type interactions. So the more that we can automate the routine decisions even, not just the data entry piece, but those business decisions that happen because of other data that's in your organization already, the more you're going to be able to use your key employees to do things like interface with your constituents, your students, your policyholders, your patients, whatever it may be that is important to your organization.
All right. Well, all right. That is Tim Talixon, Director of Intelligent Processing Solutions at Highland. Now, tell us a little bit more about Highland and where we can find out some more information.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. So let me jump up to a slide here. I'll go back just one more. Highland.com is our great website that you could go to for finding all kinds of information about the successes our customers have had, some of the research that we've done jointly with AIIM. You can find some of that on our systems also, as well as all the different technology that we've got to help organizations move forward. But I will say this, that intelligent capture is just the beginning of a very sometimes complicated journey. And this here is really just one aspect that we focus on today, but there's many areas of consideration, and they don't always sort of deploy and roll out like we've got depicted here. We've developed a cloud-first configurable platform that allows organizations to manage all kinds of information and apply lots of process automation, reporting and analytics, and retention type technologies to it. But many companies, again, thinking back to that maturity curve, you may start with just capturing your information and retaining it and then doing some reporting on that. As you've got a mind to do more process automation, more collaboration with your external vendors and constituents, or even internal with department to department. Think of this as not so much a straight-through map that you have to follow, but these are all kinds of technologies that can be implemented in a variety of ways to help your organization move through your own digital journey. And we at Highland can help you do that. We provide a lot of technology, and we provide a lot of consulting to help organizations do that. And I will say also, as a veteran of this industry, if you are at an AIIM webinar and you are consuming information that they're putting forward, you're in a good place, because you're consuming some of the most thoughtful and meaningful information that you can get in this space, and we would love to work with you going forward.
That's Tim Talixon, Director of Intelligent Processing Solutions at Highland. Find him at highland.com. Thank you, Tim. Now, I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa. I know we have a number of questions that have come up. Teresa, tell us more.
That we do, and there are so many questions in here. I know we're not going to get to all of them, and I'm sorry about that, but we will, if we don't get to your questions, we'll definitely follow up with you afterwards. So let me just jump right in here. Someone's asking, and Tim, let me just direct this to you. they've been doing a lot of
For sure.
automating, and a good portion of their business takes place out in the field. A lot of handwritten documents. What can be done there?
Mm. Oh, handwritten documents, sure. That was definitely one of the areas of technology that was always thought of as sort of a laggard. There was some success doing things like reading warranty cards and, those sort of forms that had tightly constrained boxes or combs where you can write letters in. A lot of technology that was reading them in high volume. But there's been a tremendous shift in that area of technology that allows organizations to capture those sort of handwritten forms in ways that were never possible before. A lot of organizations would even shy away from that and think, wow, it's got to be a way we can change the whole front end part of that process. And that's still the case. Can we make that form electronic? Can we do digital data entry of some of that information as it comes in? But sometimes there's just an absolute need for content to exist in paper form and for people to interact with it, whether it be to check off things or write information on there. So I will say that area of handwriting recognition, or what people would refer to as ICR, has come along a tremendous amount in the last several years. And we have that integrated with our overall technology, as to some other vendors, of course, but that's an area that is ripe for optimization, where that maybe it wasn't just even a few, I'd say even a year ago, to where it is today.
Someone asks about the research that, Kevin, that you talked about in your opening remarks. I have a slide up there right now that this is the research paper, and we have that paper available for you in the resources. So just go ahead and click on that, and you'll be able to access that full research report. So I'm going to leave that slide up there just so you see the cover image while I go through a few more of these questions here. And a couple of people have asked questions about how does what we're talking about here with intelligent capture, how is it different from or complementary to RPA? RPA is, we're all talking about this right now, robotic process automation. How can they work together?
Kevin, you want to jump in?
Well, I'd almost leave that to you, Tim. I think you can definitely capture information without robotic process automation. So it's not a contingency, but the technologies do work together well, and there are many number of advantages to using RPA in that capture process. Maybe, Tim, you could explain, maybe point us to an example.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of customers that use both technologies. So if you think back to that sort of flow diagram that I had of OCR and extract and, those pieces there, you can use RPA technology to call an OCR engine to convert a document into text, for sure. That can be done. But some of those next steps of validating that against known data sources or surfacing that to a person if it doesn't meet a certain validation percentage, those are things that would be left to be configured or built from scratch in that environment. So it's probably best to think about an intelligent capture solution on the front end. But once you have that information, that's where an RPA tool really excels. I've got all this information that's been verified, validated, accepted, and now I need to interact with all of these external systems. Some of these systems don't even have APIs or web services or anything. I've got to call up a screen to type information into a core backend system. RPA really excels at doing things like that, or calling other systems to pull information into the process. An RPA tool, you can think of it like this. It's very good at replicating keystrokes and mouse clicks. So the combination of those technologies, using intelligent capture to pull information, content from documents in a very structured way, and then take that content and move it throughout your organization using RPA, very, very powerful combination. We see a lot of customers excelling with using both technologies.
Tim, I want to ask this next question also of you here.
Sure.
You've been giving a lot of fabulous examples with how your customers are doing this and facing these challenges head on. What have you been seeing your customers facing? What are their greatest challenges to implementing these kinds of automated systems? Has it been on the technical IT side of things, or has it been people related?
Yeah, it's It's been people related. It's been budget related too. Times are very stressful for organizations right now, and have been. So there's difficulty in building the value proposition, building the ROI case to justify or further justify some of these technology implementations, because it can get looked over or passed over, right? Because in some cases you're talking about reallocating or changing some of your staff, but as growing organizations, people, even in these difficult times, there are people that are accelerating and growing. It allows companies to do more without adding additional staff or adding additional subsidiaries, things like that. So, but the area that people mostly struggle with, I think, from my perspective, the technology is understandable. The technology is implementable. If those are words, it can be done successfully. But businesses need to plan for the justification of this technology in times of tough budgets, and they really need to plan for the successful implementation of this technology, because it's so human-centric. It's not like putting in a data warehouse that people now all of a sudden get more improved reporting from their financial system. That's great. They can do their jobs better, but we're talking about something that touches all aspects of your business and all the people within your organization, making them more efficient. But more importantly, changes some of the old ways that they do business.
I think that's a really important point, Tim. AIM members tell me consistently in my interviews on AIM on Air and others that managing change, managing the people aspects of it is often a more challenging problem than even the most complicated technologies. And if you think about it, if people resist change and aren't on board with the whole idea, don't change my process. I've been doing it this way. I'm very comfortable. You're removing me from that comfort zone. If they resist that change, it doesn't matter how good the technology will be. If the people are not embracing it and the organization is not engendering it as a real thing, then even the best strategies will fail. And that's an important aspect to consider in all of our efforts. And indeed, I know that AIM has recently offered a training program on change management. Teresa, maybe you can tell us a little bit more. I know you can find out more at aim.org/training, but that is a good resource for folks looking to improve the people and change management aspects of their projects as well.
Yes, AIM has just recently launched a new program on change management, and it's a whole online training course, so I do invite you to check that out. And as Kevin said, go to aim.org/training, and you can go through that and find the one on change management.
Yeah.
I know we're getting really close on time here, but Tim, there's one more question I really want to get to, because someone's asking very specifically about the Siemens case study that you were discussing. Because of the multiple languages, a global organization, how did they organize and identify personnel for those 20 different languages to address the exceptions and the forms classification? If machine classification is insufficient, how do you juggle the multi-language aspect of this?
It's a good question. That's something that comes up in many different industries also, because there's lots of industries that support different languages. So we have to tackle that quite often. Who's the best person to send this to from a language perspective, from a certification or an education perspective? Many times what we actually try and do is create a database, a data warehouse, even, I don't want to say external to the system, but it's all part of the system, where we know our people, we know our employees, and we know what languages that they are proficient in or that they have the ability to support. So as we determine a particular document, maybe from the region, maybe from the shipping or billing address, we can determine what language, even from the content of that document, which part of the, which OCR engine was utilized in order to translate that to OCR that into text. Along the way, we can determine the language of that document, but from there, that sort of connection to who's the right person, just the same as we would create approval structures in an organization. If this invoice is over $10,000, it goes to Bob Smith for approval. it's over 100,000, it goes to the CFO, sort of those ways. We tend to find out a little bit about the employees themselves, what skill sets they possess, what languages they're comfortable or proficient in, and then tie that into the system, into our rules engine, so that we can make the best decision on who to route it to. Also ties into things like who's currently working, are they out of office, are they, who's got the shortest or longest workload right now. So we tend to, construct some pretty detailed information distribution rules so that companies can optimize things on the fly. Language is an important part of that. It's a really good question.
I just want to mention one other thing here. I mentioned our online training, and I just want to say that now is a really good time to invest in your professional development. And AIM has an exciting new offer, our virtual instructor-led training classes. Invite you to check out our Creating and Capturing Information workshop, featuring 2 hours of instruction in a virtual classroom setting with AIM's VP of Training and Certification, Jesse Wilkins. The class size is limited, and if you register now, you can save your spot. And this workshop is on Monday, August 17th, so it's coming up in about 10 days from now. So if you go to there's a link over in the resources to click through to get to the page to learn more about our virtual instructor-led training. Jesse has been doing a number of these classes, and he is just a fabulous resource. And I've actually been to a few of his classes over the years, and I personally love being a student in his classes, so I invite you to check that out. And also, just because we're getting to the end of our webinar time, a few last reminders. We have recorded the session, and you'll be able to catch it again. And please download the resources. There's some awesome stuff in there for you. Please take our feedback survey. Definitely value and read everything you have to say. I very much want to thank our underwriter, Highland. Without support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you our free educational programs like our webinars. So Highland, thank you very much for your sponsorship and support. And as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to leave you with our speakers' closing thoughts for today. So let me start first with Tim. Tim from Highland, can you offer your key takeaways of everything that you've shared today?
Yeah, interesting. I had a few things in mind as we sort of got ready for this, but based on the conversations with Kevin and really thinking back to, I'm sitting in my home office like a lot of people are, I'm sure. And as you mentioned, it's a great time to think about your own development. People taking online classes more than ever before, I think. So my takeaway here is, in these changing times with lots of uncertainty and unknowns ahead, put just even extra special care on the people part of the process. And that, if that sounds funny coming from the vendor, a guy who considers himself a technologist, maybe, but think about the people in the process, because that's really where success or failure gets determined.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. And Kevin, your closing thoughts today.
Yes, well, I would like to remind everyone that there is a podcast from AIM that is also a great resource. You can tune in to the AIM On Air podcast, where we explore these topics in depth, these topics and others, speaking with practitioners and providers. Find that at aim.org/podcast. But my closing thought, really, I think I'd like to direct to perhaps the executive level of our audience, the folks that are decision makers. It's time, in my view, to move forward with our regard to this idea of capture. And if you don't understand what we're talking about with capture, it is important and an important concept from a strategic point of view. Capture is not something that we just apply to paper, or not something that's just used to archive a document or even in a specific process. It's a view of information and an ability to capture information as a critical and strategic activity, and it deserves to be placed in that sort of box or strategic box with measures and acumen applied. In my view, intelligent capture is the starting point in your digital transformation. So it's important to understand what the possibilities are and how it really can influence the performance of the organization.
Thank you, Kevin. And that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate your time. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we will see you with our next event. Have a great day.